Seems to me we'd save a lot of work, but you can also take that approach if it remotely occurred to you. Hey folks, welcome to Deke Now. I'm going to be reacting to some TikToks today. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Let's get started.
I've always wondered why they always charge so much money for this thing.
Photoshop.
And then I literally tried making one of these things, and then I thought, like, you know, is it too late to call the person? Because, like, you know, this is a lot harder than it looks. Because even this person...
My goodness, yeah, that really looks easy. I bet there's a zillion stretch marks where the background has been moved over there. There's so many different ways to handle this better. There's the warp feature that I just absolutely love, but could just use generative fill, you know, or you could just sit there and scoot it 15 times in Liquify. All right, so, oh, we're erasing. Okay, yeah, that's the wrong thing to do. Agreed. Shouldn't erase, should mask. Just going through the compositing motions here. Okay, cool. Oh, we're going to apply destructive transformation. Well, that kind of messes things up a little bit. I'm not sure I'd recommend that approach, but converting. All right, we've got two independent layers. So unlocking the background and selecting them both. And then what command are we going to do here? Okay, I just want to make it clear, like, this is like not how you'd use this command. I could see if maybe we're going to use it in some weird different way, but the purpose of auto blend is a very old command. It's been here forever, and the purpose is to take different depths of field and composite them together automatically. It delivers very rough edges, but let's see what happens here. And the checkboxes don't really matter, but whatever. And wow, we end up with a miracle of a composition. I'm very suspicious about this part right here, because basically what happens is that command will either, it automatically masks both layers, by the way, in order to blend them together. It doesn't really do much blending. It does permanent modification to the colors of the pixels, and it absolutely either deletes a pixel or keeps it using layer mask, which is kind of useless because then you can't turn around and do anything. So hopefully this worked, and it's just like, hey, there's a miracle. You could do one of the easier compositions, it looks like to me, using a very old command in Photoshop that doesn't work very well, was never designed for this purpose. I love this one because I go, wow, it makes it look like, wow, I didn't know about that feature, but actually I do know about that feature, and it's not very good. Let's jump over and see how I would approach a composition like this.
All right, so not the same assets, but pretty similar. We've got a gigantic sea animal on one layer, and then we have the boat on a layer behind. Well, a couple of tells. One is that the two images aren't, strictly speaking, a noise match. So notice that the whale shark's a little noisy, but low detail, not much going on in the water. Whereas where the boat's concerned, a lot of detail in the water and low noise. Also, notice that the whale shark, in my case, it's a fictional creature in the video, but they don't overlap. The tip of the boat does not quite overlap. So that, because it would get ruined if we were to do that. So the video indicates up front that you shouldn't just erase, right? That would be a destructive modification. So what you want to do is unlock that background and then select both the layers. You need 2 or more layers to be selected to go to the edit menu and choose auto blend layers. Now, this is not some new command that was introduced in the last couple of years. This is 17 years old. It's been around for a long, long time. And I've discussed it in the past in the context of what it was intended to do, which is merge a bunch of basically a bunch of photographs of the same scene, whether it's a panorama or a bunch of people so that everybody's eyes are open, that kind of thing. And so I'll choose the command. We want to stack the images because they're stacked on top of each other, but they're supposed to be the same scene, not different scenes like this. And then seamless tones and colors, truly a destructive modification, as you're about to see. And then this thing doesn't do anything because we don't have any areas that we need to fill. And so it works very quickly, as you can see, but now get a load of that stuff I was telling you about, right? When you're wide, I'm sorry, let me show you. When you're wide, it's like, oh my gosh, that is awesome. That really looks cool. However, when you start zooming in, we've got the noisy detail in front of the whale shark right there. And then we have the low noise, high detail stuff from the boat layer. And then we're back to the whale layer right here at this point. And I know that's the case because I'll get rid of this top layer. It's just merged. It doesn't serve any purpose. Just a leftover from the command. And if I Alt or Option click on this layer mask, you can see there it is. Isn't that a beautiful mask? I mean, it makes the magic wand tool look like absolutely, magical, because these things are awful, and it's just, it's keeping the edge, that rectangular edge. That's why I can't overlap the tip of the boat, because that would risk harming the boat. It would be a giveaway, you see. And the boat also is quite damaged. There's just a boat layer by itself with a whale shark cut out of it quite badly. And if I turned off that layer mask, you can see you also, the actual pixels are compromised. So you can't even use this mask. It's no good to have the mask in the first place because you can't refine it in any way that's going to do you any good. So what is the better solution, given that looks pretty good from far away? Well, the better way to work, and you can see, there it is. There's the original once again. I made a copy of it. Don't worry about the background. Just go ahead and select your sea creature, what have you, and then click. I'm just going to go with remove background. I'll just be cavalier. And notice it didn't do a brilliant, it doesn't do a perfect job, but it does a non-destructive job. It didn't harm a single pixel. It just created a layer mask right here. And then it's up to you to use blend modes in order to create some sort of organic merge, right, between the actual sea creature and the boat layer behind it. I ended up with, this is my favorite that I came up with. I came up with hard light, and then I took the opacity down to 60% so that the creature looks like it's underwater. And this versus this, by the way, totally destructive, also inauthentic. That video zoomed in and showed the edges. They weren't all ratty like this. They had been modified. And I suspect actually it wasn't even sort of the result of auto blend. Whereas this is nice and we get some incremental stuff going on. And if you don't like what I came up with, you can come up with something of your own, because this is entirely non-destructive.
Photo editing trick can save you hours from exporting your images in Photoshop. Let's say you just finished editing some photos in Photoshop and you need to export all of it, but you don't want to do it one by one. I'm going to show you how to export all of your images in Photoshop with a few clicks. Let's roll.
Yeah, good setup, kind of stuff people need to do all the time. Like the angle of these photos. Interesting.
Over to image processor.
Image processor, old as time. They're actually kind of a proof of concept feature in Photoshop. But yeah, this is great. It's exactly the way to do it. It's so funny because there's newer ways of pulling this off that aren't as good. This one has really stood up well.
If you want to run additional actions on your finished images, you can do that here. But for the sake of this tutorial, I'm not going to do any of that. I typically just make sure that I have the quality set to 10.
Yeah, and then he's gonna end up with a folder full of JPEGs. It's just gonna rip through them. Yeah, you just let her go. And actually, what's really great about this is this could be hundreds or thousands of images. As long as your computer doesn't crash or something, you could just let it run. And it's really low overhead. It's funny because I actually know the guy, Russell Brown, who's when you look at the About screen, it's the first name on the people who are in charge of Photoshop. He's the one who came up with this idea. He didn't script it, but then some of the programmers scripted it for him. And the whole idea was, it is kind of a look what you can do with scripting in Photoshop. And it just happens to be a really great automated feature. So I 100% endorse that video and that command. Are you enjoying this video? Subscribe down below. Really enjoying it? Maybe give it a like. All right, so I think right here we're using custom warp, which I like. I don't really have a problem with it, but apparently this person's not satisfied by it. So jump a layer. We're going to select and jump. It's destructive, but okay. Now we're okay. We're going to what are we going to do with this? Traditional, okay. Content aware fill. I'm not sure that very homogeneous blue background needed that treatment. But puppet war. This is actually pretty cool. I could be talked into this approach because this way you have independent control over the posture. Could have shot the person with good posture in the first place, but of course that would defeat the purpose of the demonstration. So before, after, you know what? I like that one. I like it.
Well, let's take a look. I got this colorful duck. Go to the eraser.
Who's this Joker?
And eraser. Now paint away the background.
Beautiful.
One
Very
big
nice.
brush stroke to start things off. The
Old
edge of the
tool.
brush can drift into the duck, by the way. Just
wanna
don't
do
let that cross in the middle of the brush go into it. I'll undo that, and now I'll paint some more, maybe click a few times to tidy up. Give it a new background, and it looks
Problem is, this guy's new background has got a big problem. All he had to do was like, just scoot it down a little bit, and it would have been great. Wow, I've got so many TikToks to react to today, but it's so many, I couldn't possibly fit them into a single YouTube video, which is why I have more in my Patreon, which is patreon.com/steeknow. Okay, don't do that. Don't just use a big brush stroke. Why is that bottom layer called gradient fill when we're gonna make the new layer gradient? You know, you don't have to do that. You don't have to. We've already done a lot of steps we don't need to do here. Why would you set it to hard light before you start adding colors? You'd set the colors first, right? And then you'd add the hard light mode, I would think. Anyway, well, we're doing a lot of work. It's meticulous, give it that. I have this sneaking suspicion that we're just gonna spend, a lot of time making a gradient. That's a pretty effect. I'll say two things about it. First of all, I guarantee you there's a gradient that ships with Photoshop that's a lot like that one, just in case you'd like to start with something else. And I would approach it a little differently. I think I have a way to get a very similar effect with a lot more control and flexibility.
Hey, so this is Deke of the future, here to eat a little bit of crow. I thought for sure I'd be able to improve on that sunset technique, and I can't. It's great. So a shout out to IMJEYEMGI, who came up with this, and I'm just going to review it really quick. It's not like we're adding a sunset where no sunset is. There's the sun peeking out between these two heads right here, and we're just emphasizing it with some color. So it's not like there was a smart aleck, of course, that commented, gosh, why don't you just, here's a technique for you, why don't you go out and shoot it correctly or something like that. But this is brilliant. It's a gradient layer, independent gradient layer set to the hard light blend mode, which is really key, by the way. We'll come to that in a moment, and I'll double click on it so you can see that it's radial. And then here are 3 different color stops, and we've got an opacity stop. So it starts 100% opaque in the center and becomes 0% opaque on the outside. And then we've got 3 shades of orange going right here. So the first color stop, notice the hue and brightness values are stationary throughout. It's basically a hue of 30 degrees orange, brightness value of 100%. So I'm kind of rounding off, but saturation 25%. And then in the next one, same thing, but saturation 50%. And then right in the center there, we've got saturation of 75%. So if I were to simplify, I would just say there's no reason. These are approximations again. I've watched the video about 100 times now, but if I were to simplify things, I'd just say there's no contribution being made by that central stop the way things are. Of course, you could go your own way and change out those colors if you want to. Now, what I thought I'd do is show you that, gosh, the way that the video started was the way to go, just with a big orange brush stroke. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I'll create a new layer, and I'll just call it Sunball, let's say. And I'll get the brush tool, and it's very big, and it's very soft, as you can see right here. And then the color is just the 30-degree hue, 100% brightness, and then in between, saturation 50%, which is kind of splitting the difference here. So it's not quite as nuanced as a gradient, of course. And then I just tap the caps lock key so I can set it right there in the center of the highlight, and then I click, and then you're done, and all you got to do is just change that blend mode to hard light because it ends up producing this beautiful effect. So that's a lot simpler than setting a bunch of color stops, of course, but it's not as versatile. So here, let me show you. If I try to move it around by dragging it with the move tool, it's clipped because it's a pixel-based effect. So then you'd have to, you just have to recreate it. Not that hard. But it's also hard to move the gradient layer. That's Photoshop's fault. I want to show you this. You can't just drag it with the move tool. It's not going to make any difference. What you have to do is double click on the thumbnail to bring up the gradient fill dialog box, and then you can drag it around like so. But you're never going to clip because it goes on and on forever. Isn't that wonderful? All right, I want to show you one more thing because I'm really grooving on this trick. I've got another image from Dreamstime, and I'll turn on that radial gradient right there. Now, because it's set to hard light, it won't clip. So it's not going to clip the highlights unless they started clipped in the first place, which means that if you're like, wow, the only thing I want about, I'm loving the cowbell. I just want more. And so just jump it by pressing Control-J, Command-J on the Mac, just to give yourself that much more amber sunset. And so I just want to say that when push comes to shove, this ends up being a flawless technique.
Definitely don't paint with orange. Oh, there's the X. Okay, good. All right. So what do we do instead? We jump it. Okay, I just got to say, right, how many of these have we seen where they jump the background? I'll bet you a quarter we don't do anything with the background. Let's see. All right, we're going to camera raw though. Amazing, right? All these masking things that are available inside Camera Raw / Lightroom that are not inside Photoshop. It kills me. And now I would think we're going to make the hair orange at this point. We've got a bad edge going over there by her, I guess it'd be over here by her jaw. Can you see that? And I'll just say, very cool technique, right? Never did anything with the background, so you owe me a quarter. And I would, in this case, I would like to bring the mask back into Photoshop and fix it a little bit. And I covered that exact technique. I show you how to bring that hair mask into Photoshop. So definitely, please check that one out.
Let me show you how to place a logo into a bottle in Photoshop. Instead of clicking and dragging, I'll use keyboard shortcuts to speed up the process.
Okay, this is my buddy Jesus. Totally check him out, Photoshop training channel. If you like my stuff, you'll totally like his. So I'm personally psyched. I haven't seen this one before.
By going into the select menu and choose subject. Then click on the layer mask icon to hide the background. And right click on the layer to convert it into a smart object to work non-destructively. Press Ctrl-T to transform and use the handles to scale and position the logo accordingly. Then right click and select warp. From the options bar, under warp, select arch and use the handle to determine the right bend for the bottle.
Can I say right there, he doesn't use cylinder. He's on a cylinder, but he doesn't use cylinder, he uses arch, so that works too.
Transformation, press Alt and the left bracket key to select the layer below, and duplicate it by pressing Ctrl-J. Move it to the top of the layer stack by pressing Ctrl and the right bracket key. And now press Ctrl-Shift-U to desaturate the layer, and Ctrl-Alt-G to create a clipping mask. And press Alt-Shift-J to change the blending mode to linear light. Then press Shift and forward to change the fill to 40% and reveal the drops over the logo. Let me show you how to play.
So you get why he's using Shift 4 right there, right? Because he applied linear light. So you need it. It's one of the fill opacity 8 blend modes, so it's going to do a better job there. Anyway, I mean, there's a pro for you. Stellar job. Wow, I hope you enjoyed me reacting to those TikToks as much as I did. If so, go ahead and comment, subscribe, all that jazz. And hey, for more, go to patreon.com/DeekNow, and then go to Deek.com and sign up for my weekly newsletter. I'm Deke McClellan. This is Deek Now.